we will now return to speakers in favor, beginning with Eric Bilal.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Bilal from the New York City Economic Development Corporation. I'll be reading testimony on behalf of Brett Swanson from the Queens Chamber of Commerce. Good afternoon. My name is Brett Swanson from the Queens Chamber of Commerce. Far Rockaway has been a victim of decades of disinvestment that has long left this community struggling for access to healthcare, jobs, and services. The land use actions and larger roadmap for action represent the opportunity for change that the community has been seeking for decades, change that can only come with bold action. The Queens Chamber supports the proposal for downtown Far Rockaway for the following three reasons. One, in order to support this key business corridor on the peninsula, there needs to be a shift away from the outdated uses to more neighborhood-friendly ground floor commercial and community-oriented uses. There needs to be a mix of incomes within close proximity of this corridor to sustain a vibrant, diverse mix of businesses that can more adequately service this community. And lastly, imagine a downtown Far Rockaway with recreation, food, shopping, and healthcare that can service the local community while creating jobs. Our goal as the Queens Chamber is to be a resource for the business community to ensure that we foster economic growth and prosperity throughout the borough of Queens. This proposal provides a real path to deliver on over 500 permanent jobs in this area and catalyze additional public and private investments in the area. We look forward to supporting this proposal to its successful completion. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Bilal Swanson?
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker in support is Collie Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Callie Williams from the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and I am reading testimony from Jared Walsh, the Chief Executive Officer of St. John's Episcopal Hospital. I'm writing on behalf of St. John's Episcopal Hospital in support of the proposal to invest in Far Rockaway, including the proposed land use actions through ULURP and programming that has been set out in the action plan. Far Rockaway has been a victim of decades of disinvestment that have long left this community struggling for access to healthcare, jobs, and services. The downtown Far Rockaway plan will turn the tide of benign neglect with a more equitable strategy to deliver investment, resources, and infrastructure that will position the residents of this community to be competitive with the rest of the city. The Rockaways has not been able to catch a break on the healthcare front. The closing of Peninsula Hospital has only further exacerbated by Hurricane Sandy, leaving St. John's Episcopal Hospital as the only hospital on the 11.5 miles long and 3/4 of a mile wide peninsula, leaving nearly 130,000 year-round residents in the lurch since 2012. At St. John's Episcopal Hospital, we are working diligently to continue to service the health needs of the community and will look to your continued support with the growing demand. As a member of the Downtown Far Rockaway Working Group and a participant in the public meetings, St. John's Episcopal Hospital has participated along with business owners, local community groups, and residents to inform a smart, community-driven proposal. We have been impressed by the openness and the extensive outreach effort of the city to reach all the stakeholders. Thank you very much, and we encourage you to support this effort.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Williams? Thanks. Our next speaker in support is Jonathan Chung.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and everyone still in attendance. My name is Jonathan Chung. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the Queens Library. Today, we are testifying in support of the proposal to catalyze public and private investment in downtown Far Rockaway, ensuring this area will once again be the center of commercial, and small business activity on the Rockaway Peninsula, delivering quality jobs for the residents of this area. The Queens Library has long recognized the value of this transit-rich part of the peninsula. The site at Mott and Central Avenues has been the location of the library since 1904 and was one of the first branches in the Queens Library system. The facility that is currently at this location has been in operation since 1968. The Far Rockaway Community Library truly proved its versatility, serving as a community center and providing disaster relief in the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy, where aid, food, clothing, and emergency supplies were distributed to those in need. As part of the broader interagency team investing in Far Rockaway, the Queens Library is committed to increasing opportunity for all New Yorkers with a new state-of-the-art 18,000 square foot library. Designed by Snohetta, a Norwegian architectural firm, the new facility will maintain its place in the community as a hub for resources, for example, by providing increased educational and workforce program initiative to residents. The new building, designed to resiliency standards in order to withstand future storms and hopefully nothing like we saw back then, is located above the floodplain as well. We anticipate construction will begin at the end of this year. The need for a versatile library to serve the community in the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy is just one important factor that was considered in this design. The new Far Rockaway Community Library will have improved meeting and conference rooms to accommodate community meetings and events, as well as provide access to broadband and other technologies that will better serve the needs of this community. With the growth of downtown Far Rockaway, the new library will be well positioned to serve the various needs of the Far Rockaway residents. For services offered by the library, such as our Job and Business Academy, residents will be in a better position to gain access to the new jobs created through exciting public-private partnerships that will in turn create new commercial office and retail spaces. These land use actions are part of the comprehensive plan outlined in the broader roadmap for action, which represents an opportunity for progress that the community has been seeking for decades. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Questions for Mr. Chung? Commissioner Delahoo's.
Hi, Mr. Chung. Thanks for being here. When we were out at the site, I noticed that there was a teen library just down the block. So with the new library, will things be consolidated, or were you still going to keep a couple programs separate?
Sure. So we're going to maintain the current teen space and still utilize it as a teen center. And adjacent to that will be the swing space, where we will have programs and services while the new building is being under construction.
And the place where the teen space is now, that's leased privately?
Yes, we do lease that.
Okay. And then I'm just wondering, I mean, we've obviously seen some of the designs for the new library plan. Did you guys at all consider making it a mixed-use space, meaning of housing above with an expanded library?
I can't say specifically to that site. It is something that we keep an eye on as we move forward with future projects, but I can't say for certain if that was one of those that fell into that category.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Arfon.
Both questions asked and answered.
That shows both efficiency and comedy. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Chung.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We now have available Neil Gagliardi from the city's Department of Transportation in the event that there are questions from any commissioners.
I just have one.
Yes, Mr. Gagliardi.
I will defer to my other colleague, who is the project manager. I think there were some specific questions from Commissioner Cantor on phasing. Erin Maciel, who is also signed up, will answer those.
Okay, so
Okay.
we'll wait a
Yeah.
moment. Our next speaker in support is Jonathan Gusta.
Not quite.
My name is Jonathan Gasco. I'm the district manager of Community Board 14. In fact, I've been DM for 30 years.
Wow.
You're saying he looks so young. How is that possible? I will be a city employee for 34 years, so I started when I was 9 working for the city. My office is in the Far Rockaway Urban Renewal area, and it has been there for 30 years, so I have intimate knowledge. I'm very excited about this project, but we have a number of concerns, and I hope after my presentation you'll ask me questions about the community garden, which we don't support, the parking, which we have great concerns about, and a number of other issues that were brought up here. So good morning. I'd first like to thank Councilman Richards. Wonderful job. All the agencies did work with the community. I, for almost 15 years, am an adjunct professor at Queens College. I teach classes in planning, zoning, and climate change. And what I teach my students is keep the stakeholders involved, and they have done that. We have not liked what we heard sometimes when we were with the agencies, but clearly they cannot be criticized for not reaching out, and they've done a wonderful job. I'd like to thank the mayor for committing $100 million, the borough president for completely supporting our conditional approval as well. And we hope you folks support us and make the changes we request, as well as the city council. For decades, the good people of Far Rockaway have looked jealously on the hundreds of millions of dollars being spent revitalizing downtown Jamaica, Flushing, Astoria, Long Island City, and other neighborhoods. This is our chance, but it must be done correctly. We only will get one bite at this apple. Let's do it right. The community board had 2 different committees look at this. We had an ad hoc committee, which was made up of members of the board and all the civics and all the businesses. Then it went to our land use committee. We had a number of public hearings. We had public participation that was second to none. We had a public hearing, obviously, as we were required before the vote on the Euler. At all these meetings, one thing was common. Everyone said, project is too dense, the buildings are way too high, and there's not enough parking. And that's what everyone said, whether they were in favor of the project or against it. Too many units, too high, okay? We're not Long Island City, we're not Manhattan. 14-story buildings, 12-story buildings, 10-story buildings is not in contact with the neighborhood. It's just not. The buildings around there at its highest are about 7 stories, which is why in our motion we said no more than 105 feet and only 2 buildings be at that height, because we were deeply concerned about that. Just around the Far Rockaway urban renewal area is a residential area with 5 to 6-story buildings, and then neighborhoods that are 1 to 3 family. So it is fairly suburban, except for the center of the community. So the height is a big issue. The parking, there's no parking now, all right? For some reason, we've never been able to figure out, no one used that municipal lot. You know, if you say 45%, I believe it. I think it's less than that. My office is near there.
Mr. Gasca, if you could wrap up, and you have invited questions,
Oh,
which I
okay.
suspect you'll be getting.
All
from
right, so
the commission.
finally, the school is necessary. Asking kids to get on a bus and go to the end of Rockaway 7 miles away is not something we support. Our motion is attached. My minutes are here, so I'd love to answer any questions that you folks have.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Delos.
You definitely left the questions open, or the door
Yes.
open to ask the questions. So it would be helpful to understand why the lack of support for the community garden. And then if you could unpack the school recommendation a bit further, and also, obviously, there's a discussion about modification of the boundaries that would, I think, address some of the community board's concerns about height.
Yes.
It would be helpful to hear your
Sure.
thoughts on that.
All right, so community garden, we have supported community gardens throughout Rockaway. We have acres of community gardens. We think they're great. This particular site, there's really no children's playground within miles of there except at the Red Fern houses. And quite frankly, no one who's going to buy here or rent here is going to go to Red Fern houses for their kids to play. It's just not happening. We don't live in that world. It would be nice. So if we're going to be real, this is a perfect spot for these thousands of new families and children to play. That's why. It's not that we don't support community gardens, but there just is not a playground. The school, look, I'm one of the few people in this room that understand, environmental impact studies and mitigation, and certainly in the community, I'm one of the few people. And the Board of Education's answer was, yeah, there is excess capacity throughout the district. So kindergartners who live on Mott Avenue in one of the new houses, there is an available seat in Bell Harbor, 7.5 miles away. That dog don't hunt. It just doesn't make sense. If it was junior high or high school, fine, all right? Even middle school, maybe. But you can't ask kindergartners to 6th graders to get on a bus every day and travel 6, 7, 8 miles on the other side of the district to go. Also, we want to attract people. We want to attract middle-class, working-class people. One of the first things that, in the teaching classes and development, location, 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 is going to ask, what are the schools, right? Our communities in this city that have the best real estate value have what? Very good schools and schools that are neighborhood schools. That's why we're concerned that just the travel for the young children and parents are just not going to move here, and we want young families to come. They want to get out, walk a few blocks, go to an elementary school. So that's that. The parking issue, we're a transportation desert, as they said, we're a food desert. If you get on the Mott Avenue stop, okay, and you're taking the commute into Manhattan, on a good day, it's about an hour and 15 minutes. I grew up on Long Island. I've lived in the city for 30 years. You can get on the Long Island Railroad at Huntington, which is in Suffolk County, and get to Penn Station in 50 minutes. That's insane, and it's not fair. So people are going to need cars to go to work. Even worse, if you live in Far Rockaway and you have to take mass transportation to Jamaica, where there are a lot of jobs, it's an hour and a half by public transportation. Okay? You can get in Albany almost in an hour and a half. Okay? So people are going to want to drive. That's why we're asking, no matter what the income is, that there be 75% parking. So we create the special district that they want to do, but instead of having the parking they're proposing, we're asking that off-street parking be 75%. If you don't have that, these people are going to park on the streets. Then people are not going to be able to find a spot to go to all the new restaurants and other retail establishments we're hoping to do, and the businesses won't thrive. And Eugene is right. People will continue to go to 5 towns or Valley Stream. So it just doesn't make sense, which is why we want the density down at 1,100 units as well, because that helps with the parking issue. Look, every day from 8 until 5, I've been on the corner of Mott and Beach 20th, right across the street from there, all right? Right now, I get at the office at 8. There's nothing open except 2 stores, all right? Any available spot is taken. Why? Because the people from 5 towns drive in and park where there's not a meter and hop on the railroad. Hop on the A train, all right? So every spot that doesn't have a meter is taken by 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's just not going to get better. It's going to get worse if we add, even if you listen to us and do 1,100 units, it's still not going to be good. And to think that everyone's going to take a bike or take mass transportation or whatever is a nice look. It's just not going to happen, folks. It's just not reality. You know, I want to be 6'2" and have a full head of hair. Those things aren't happening for me either. So people are not going to take mass transportation.
Before I turn it over to other commissioners for questions, I do feel the need to say that you actually are addressing a group of folks who know their way around Indianapolis.
Okay. No, I'm talking about, I'm hoping you do.
Other questions from the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Levin.
Well, since you seem to be very knowledgeable about planning, one of the conundrums by your, I certainly understand from a neighborhood perspective the desire to see new development of a slightly smaller scale than is being proposed here. But we've also heard testimony from EDC, and I think we know on other projects, it takes a certain critical mass to make happen all of the good economic things that we hope will happen at this location. It's, especially to have thriving retail, is going to need an expanded consumer base. So what do you think you're essentially proposing is it a 50% reduction in the number of new units?
Well, it's a little less than that, but yeah.
Okay, but it's a pretty substantial whack to the number of
Plus
new
the
residents that would be
potential
brought.
of other development outside there are areas there are buildings that have been vacant that have not been developed and people have been waiting. So there is the potential for more residential as well, but within that area, yeah, we're saying we came up with the number of 1,100.
So do you think that the economic hopes for the area, the retail hopes, the improved services, the improved shopping, is that feasible with fewer new residents?
I do, and quite frankly, when this all started, we wanted a economic development plan that was mostly retail. This kind of morphed into a housing plan with some retail. And that's the thing now. I get it. You know, we have a housing shortage. We support affordable housing. We have Edgemere, which is going to be continued. And we actually asked for more affordable at 60% AMI and above, not below. but we've asked for more affordable, but at the higher end of the AMI level. We believe that, I call it the Disney effect, when I teach my classes. You know, if you build it, they will come. And I think if we really, what I've seen on the other end of Rockaway, really from the middle of Rockaway, in the last 10 years, is areas that were not developed really after 2008, by around 2010, after the collapse, they started building again. Rockaway got hot. The Auburn by the Sea project is, you know, the $1 million houses sell first, and then the $600,000 houses, two-family houses sell next. So it's working its way east. They're developing everywhere now at different levels of affordability, and I see no issue of that continuing because there's plenty of vacant land. The other thing that I think we're forgetting is, and this is my third urban renewal plan since I've been there, is Auburn East, which is literally a half a mile away from this project. They're talking about 2,000 units. So I am not worried about there not being enough feet on the ground to go shopping. And I think that the people, like the people from Bayswater, they will finally come there and shop. The people from Far Rockaway, the Reed's Lane area, which is a large Orthodox Jewish community, shop in the Five Towns. They'll have a reason to shop there. It will provide jobs. We understand all that. But, you know, as I say, you can't put 5 pounds of cheese in a 1-pound bag. And almost 2,000 units is doing that. Mott Avenue is not being widened, okay? And someone mentioned keep the village. Well, if you're going to add 3,000 units or 2,000 units, it's not a village anymore. If you're going to add 12-story buildings, it's not a village anymore. Looking at what the DOT is looking to do, and look, they're doing the best they can with the limited space they have. It's going to be tough, even at 1,100 units, to be quite frank with you. There's going to be significant traffic during the rush hour. And we took that all into account when we came up with this number. So and some people think that's way too high as well. I mean, we debated this within the board, that number was too high. But understanding that you need kind of, like you said, economy of scale here, and for them to make money and to do the other things, that's why we came up with that number.
Other questions for Mr. Gaston?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We now have available to answer questions Erin Masel from the Department of Transportation.
Hi, good afternoon. I would like to address some of the questions. I'm the project manager for the downtown reconstruction project. I'm a registered landscape architect. So I know that there was a question from Commissioner Cantor regarding phasing and looking at the municipal parking lot. So, our overall phasing plan is really to support the larger redevelopment plan and ensure that the infrastructure is in place. We have always looked at the closure of the municipal parking lot in the interim as a construction staging location for both the RFP site and the plaza. So I don't know if that answers his question, but I'm willing to elaborate if you'd like.
I would actually leave it to commissioners if they have further questions. Thank you. And our final registered speaker is Rebecca Gavert from EDC.
Great. Good afternoon. I'm Rebecca Gafford from EDC. I'm here to answer some additional questions. I have written down, I think, a question about ferry access, and I think there was a question about schools as well. So in terms of ferry access, I'm happy to say that EDC is proud to have service. Just a couple weeks ago, that was regular service extended to the Rockaway Peninsula, and that is at Beach 108th Street. There is a free shuttle service that extends east on the peninsula to Beach 32nd Street, so that does not go all the way to downtown Far Rockaway. However, we are currently working on a study peninsula-wide of expanded service, ferry service or infrastructure in the peninsula, so more to come on that soon. Okay. And the question about schools, I'm not sure I totally caught the question, but happy to answer any other question about schools if it wasn't answered previously.
Commissioner Levin?
Well, I think we've heard testimony from the folks in the community about yes, it may be the case that from a narrow environmental impact statement perspective, there is not a school impact here, but that to make this a thriving neighborhood, particularly with so many new residents, we need a local school.
Sure.
Must be an issue you've thought a lot about. What's the answer?
Yes, we've thought a lot about it. We will continue to think about it. We've heard this from day one in the community in all of the extensive outreach that we've done. We're working with our partners at DOE and SCA, and as you've heard and probably seen in the EIS, we're in a situation where we're not showing an impact, even with all of this, worst case development in the future. So we know that this is a long-term proposal. All of this development would not come overnight, but we hear these needs from the community, and we will continue to talk about that. We know that it's an issue. The EIS says what it says, so we're continuing those conversations.
Okay, are you
working
thinking
with
about
DOE.
setting space aside in some of the development sites here so that if the school need develops, it's
Sure.
not too late?
Sure, so I know that that's an approach that's been used before, so we're having those conversations now.
Yes, Commissioner Efron.
Thank you for answering the ferry question.
Sure.
I'm eager to hear about the study results. Similarly, is there any thought on the part of EDC, since so much investment is to be leveraged here, in having any connection to beach access from downtown?
Sure. So as you know, when you're out there, the beach is close by, but you don't necessarily feel it. So that's something we're exploring. We don't have any specific plans right now, but I know we're working with DOT on wayfinding as part of their planned project in the area.
Other questions? Thank you. That is the last of our registered speakers. If there is anyone else here in attendance who would like to speak, please let us know. Okay. Oh, yeah. No, I'm afraid people are not allowed to speak a second time. I'm sorry, sir. What I would note is that the record on this matter is going to remain. Oh, did you want to speak, sir?
Me and my coworker, I'm Paris Trotter from the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. We signed up one of these, but I guess it didn't happen.
Oh, I apologize.
We were with part of the project team for questions. There were some questions about, there was a question about stakeholders that, housing stakeholders in the neighborhood, and there might have been another question that my coworker can answer. Basically, for legal services, Queens Legal Services is the provider here. Of course, that's borough-wide. But there are some local providers of housing services that we've been engaging in these conversations. Margaret Community Corp, who's based in the neighborhood, very active across the peninsula, particularly after Sandy. And then NHS, Neighborhood Housing Services of Jamaica, who provide services all over Southeast Queens. And they actually have a contract from HPD to do some of those services. And then finally, well, actually, RDRC does some housing services work as well. And finally, the Center for New York City Neighborhoods have been very involved in these conversations with us as well.
And sir, could you give us your name?
I'm sorry, it's Paris Strotter.
Ah, great. Thank you very much. Questions from the commission? Okay, if not, I'll note that the record on this matter is going to remain open for 10 days to receive comments on the draft environmental impact statements, and it will be open through Monday, June 5th of this year. And with that, the hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 27 and 28. Calendar number 27, CD14, C170256ZMQ. Calendar number 28, N170257ZRQ. A public hearing in the matter of applications for zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning Broad Channel.
If EDC could take its boards away, if I could ask the EDC representatives to take the boards away so that we can continue with our next hearing? We're having our 7th inning stretch. Do we have our presenter on this? Oh, okay. So this item has a degree of non-controversy that there are not speakers on this item. We saw at our review session the strong support that there was. I will at this point ask if there is anyone in the audience who would want to be heard on these two actions. If not, then the hearing will be closed. Oh, did you have a question? No, okay, the hearing is closed.
Borough of Queens, calendar numbers 29 and 30, Community District 10. Calendar number 29, C170255ZMQ. Calendar number 30, N170267ZRQ. A public hearing in the matter of application for a zoning map and zoning text amendments concerning Hamilton Beach.
Okay, as with the prior item, there will not be a presentation, given the strong support and the presentation that was made at the review session. We do have some speakers in support, and I would ask Betty Breton.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and Commissioners. My name is Betty Brayton. I'm the chairperson of Queens Community Board 10, and I'm here to provide comment in regard to these two item numbers 29 and 30 on today's calendar. These items affect areas within Howard Beach and Hamilton Beach communities that are located in Community Board 10's district that was severely damaged by the impacts of Superstorm Sandy. The intent, as Community Board 10 understands them, is that they will aid in providing for future resiliency. Community Board 10 thanks Melissa Hurlitz, along with the other Department of City Planning staff that work closely with the board on the Old Howard Beach, Hamilton Beach, and Broad Channel Resilient Neighborhood Study. What is before you today grew out of the recommendations from that study. The local community participated in that study, was kept apprised of its progress, and recognizes that the input provided by the community was incorporated into the resulting report. Therefore, the community supports it. On April 6th, Community Board 10 conducted its public hearing and voted its recommendation on these matters. Our recommendations were transmitted to you following that meeting. At our April 6th meeting, detailed information was presented by DCP staff regarding the proposed zoning map amendments that will affect our Hamilton Beach community, as well as the changes to the small commercial area in proximity to the Howard Beach Subway Air Train Station located in Old Howard Beach. During March 2017, following the certification of this proposal, the Hamilton Beach Civic Association held a public meeting to review and discuss the proposal with its area residents. At that meeting, DCP staff also presented detailed information and answered questions. No one expressed any opposition at either the Community Board public hearing or at the meeting of the Civic Association. Following our hearing, we voted unanimously, with one member present but not voting due to a conflict. The zoning changes that are proposed more closely match the existing build form found throughout Hamilton Beach. They will help control density and should help to limit future vulnerability by promoting more resilient future construction within the area. The proposed changes within the commercial area will better reflect the existing pattern of development and use there and make reconstruction of the commercial buildings there easier in the future. It should be noted that those buildings in that commercial area are among the oldest in Howard Beach. Our Sandy impact zone has always been vulnerable to tidal flooding. We don't have to look any further than tonight's weather report. But prior to Sandy, it would be fair to say that none of us who live or operate businesses there expected or were prepared for what occurred. Resiliency is not just a buzzword for us. We struggle every day with the myriad issues involved in getting our people back into their homes, making their homes more able to withstand the ravages of nature, and keeping our existing community intact into the future, while balancing the need to better control future development. Just have two more sentences. While our community wishes it wasn't so, Sandy made it quite clear there is risk, both human and economic, that must somehow be reduced and/or limited without destroying the existing community. The creation of a special coastal risk zone is a step in the right direction. We urge you to adopt these changes, and when you have our written testimony, you will see on the back of it some future changes that we believe would be necessary if we're going to engage in wise zoning for resiliency. Thank you.
Ms. Brayton, I particularly want to thank you because even knowing how non-controversial and well-supported this project is, we appreciate your coming here to the public hearing.
Absolutely. This has been a project we've been working closely with for a number of years now. You know, we're 5 years
Yeah.
into us in the act, and it's needed. You know, while we wish it weren't necessary, we believe that it is. And even though it's non-controversial, we wanted to indicate to you the strong support of the community for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you.
We have another speaker in support, Roger Gondron.
Gendron, but that's-
Gendron, apologies.
I've been called worse. By my wife.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. It was morning, but now it's afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Roger Gendron. I'm the president of the New Hamilton Beach Civic Association. I printed this in big font so the glasses can stay here. I'd like to thank the Department of City Planning, most especially Melissa Hurlitz and Brendan Pillar for working so closely with the Civic Association. They listened to what our community goals and wishes were, and they made sure they were included in the Old Howard Beach, Hamilton Beach, and Broad Channel Resiliency Study. I'm here to provide support to items number 29 and 30 on today's calendar. These items affect areas within Howard Beach and Hamilton Beach communities located in South Queens. Hamilton Beach is a quiet, tucked out-of-the-way community in southern Queens, consisting of one main road, 104th Street, with 11 dead-end blocks connected to it. There's one way in to Hamilton Beach by car and two ways by foot, a pedestrian bridge that crosses over Hawtree Basin, and a boardwalk that runs along the A train from Coleman Square into Hamilton Beach at 104th Street. Hamilton Beach was established in the early 1900s, and what started out as a collection of small fishermen shacks by the early 1920s became a year-round community, with many of the single-family bungalows being completed by the early 1930s. Hamilton Beach remained that way until the early 2000s. The city auctioned off the available vacant lots, and developers came in and started building multi-family, semi-detached homes. The structures were totally out of character for the neighborhood and continue to overtax the limited infrastructure we currently have in place. Hamilton Beach has always been prone to tidal flooding and is severely affected by coastal storms, with the worst, of course, being Superstorm Sandy. The neighborhood saw a tidal inundation of over 8 feet in some areas, and each and every home, almost 400 in total, took on some water. By the 2050s, sea level is expected to be as much as 30 inches higher in New York's coastal area, and by 2100, the coast could see up to 6 foot of sea level rise. This continued zoning would allow for even more multifamily detached buildings and could ultimately put more residents in danger. The proposed zoning before you, most especially the Special Coastal Risk District, is something that the residents of Hamilton Beach fully support. The uniquely built environment of our neighborhood, including the narrow lots and narrow-lying streets, pose challenges for resilient retrofitting and reconstruction. Existing R2, R31, and R32 zoning districts from the early 1960s do not account for the narrow lot frontages in the residential areas of our neighborhoods, and the Special Coastal Risk District is a great opportunity to identify changes to the zoning in the residential area, as they would help maintain neighborhood character as well as enable retrofits and buildings. The zoning changes proposed would align with the majority of the homes found throughout Hamilton Beach. It would help to limit future vulnerability by promoting more resilient construction within the area and help control the density of our small town. Thank you again for taking the time to listen, and I guess if anybody has any questions, other than where are we going for lunch?
I think that's a question on all of our minds. Any questions from the commissioners? Then thank you, Mr. Gendron.
Thank you.
Those are the only two registered speakers. Are there any other people in the audience who would want to be heard on this matter? If not, then the public hearing is closed, and I would note that given the overwhelming support and given the fact that we have heard from the city council member about the eagerness to get this before the council, that we may not take the full time of the commission and bring this forward for a vote promptly.
Okay. Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 31, CD6, C170158, ZSM, a public hearing in the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning 34th Street Heliport.
Okay, we have the project team led by David Hopkins. He also has available for questions Tracy Bell and Sophia Abel.
Good afternoon, Chair Lago and Commissioners. I'm David Hopkins. I'm the Senior Director of Aviation at the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and I'm here today to testify in support of the special permit for the East 34th Street heliport. EDC oversees the heliport on behalf of the Department of Small Business Services, and we have an operating agreement with Atlantic Aviation, which manages the heliport. That operating agreement actually expires in August. We have a 6-month extension time frame on it. But we do plan on issuing a request for proposals this summer for a new operator. And we want that request for proposals to reflect the conditions in the special permit. 3 heliports provide service in Manhattan to the businesses in Midtown and downtown. In addition to 34th Street, EDC oversees the downtown Manhattan heliport, and the Hudson River Park Trust oversees the West 30th Street heliport. The downtown heliport is the only heliport of those 3 that allows tourist flights. At East 34th Street, activities focused on corporate and charter traffic that serve the business community in Midtown. The heliport provides convenient access to these businesses, but it also plays a critical role in providing emergency medical flights to the hospitals along First Avenue. EDC agrees with the operating restrictions proposed for the heliport by Community Board 6, including the following key elements: no operations on the weekends, and during the weekday, the heliport would be open only from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. except for emergencies. No tourist flights allowed out of the East 34th Street heliport, and a maximum of 28,000 operations per year. That's equivalent to about 14,000 flights. In addition, we've agreed to conduct a review at the end of the 5th year of the agreement to assess compliance with these terms and conditions and consult with the community on operations at the heliport. All these conditions are also consistent with those proposed by the Borough President in her May 22nd recommendation to approve the special permit. On the recommendation of the Borough President, as reflected in her transmittal, EDC has also agreed to extend our reporting of the activity at the heliport to include a quarterly report of operations and a report every 6 months on infrastructure and maintenance issues and improvements. And we will also begin providing a copy of our monthly summary of 311 complaints to the Community Board and the Borough President that we already give to the City Council. We'd be glad to include the Planning Commission on that if you would like. We think the proposed operating parameters strike a reasonable balance between community concerns and the need to continue to provide this vital transportation facility for corporate and emergency users. We'd appreciate your support of the special permit, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Efron.
Thank you. Are any of the other 2 operating heliports open prior to 8 a.m.? I only ask because it seems if it is primarily for the business community, that's a very late start.
The West 30th Street heliport is technically available 24 hours per day, and the downtown heliport opens at 7 a.m. But for tourist flights, it doesn't open until 9.
And just to follow up on that, is the current hours of operations 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.?
Yes, it's,
Okay.
it's consistent with the
Thank you.
previous special permit condition.
Other questions? Commissioner Levin.
Yes, Mr. Hopkins, the Community Board, and I believe also the Borough President, had some requests about the maintenance of adequate lighting, visibility, safe access for pedestrians, vehicles, and bicycles.
Right.
Could you describe a little bit, I think that those are issues you're working on. Can you fill us in on what the plans are?
Sure, so there are 2 things going on. One, EDC has secured a grant to completely replace the fencing system around the heliport. Right now, it's a rather unattractive metal fence. We're going to replace it with a sort of a wrought iron fence that includes additional lighting for security purposes and also additional security cameras. And our staff member, Sophie, can provide additional information on that contract if you're interested. The other element that's referred to in the Community Board resolution is that the DOTs, the Department of Transportation, is interested in extending the bikeway through this property or around this property, and is working on a plan to do that in a very narrow, constrained area between the security fence for the heliport and the access off of the FDR Drive. We've agreed to cooperate in that and the heliport operator will as well, but it's a DOT-led project. So, but we anticipate that that will move forward over the term of the new special.
Okay, but there is physical space available for it if DOT figures out. I mean, that is a very challenging spot on a bicycle, I think.
One of the concerns of the community board with respect to the fence project was that there is sort of a blind corner as you're coming up from the water club north. So the fencing will not be opaque in that area, will be open so that the bicyclist should be able to see around that corner now. My understanding is the DOT is interested in using the raised sidewalk. So there's a heliport fence, there's the parking space is a small access roadway, then a raised sidewalk, and then the road off the FDR, the exit off the FDR. That raised sidewalk is really going to probably have to accommodate both pedestrian and bicycle users. It remains to be seen how you allocate the space because they haven't finalized the plans there.
Okay. And then on the lighting, will the improved lighting be reflected also onto the sidewalk? You described, I mean, it will improve security to the heliport, but I think the public realm improvements are also really needed there.
I believe that there are external lights on the fencing project. If you wouldn't mind, Sophie can fill you in on that.
Hi, my name is Sophia Abel. I work for the Asset Management Department. The lighting is going to be installed on the outside where the pedestrians will be walking. In total, there's going to be 8 lightings, 2 on each side.
Okay, so it's going to help people on the
Yes,
outside
on
of the fence.
outside. No lighting is being installed inside the heliport.
Other questions? Thank you. We have an applicant who is registered to speak in favor, Amit Tagani.
If I heard correct, I'm speaking on behalf of the borough president. Good afternoon,
Oh,
Chair.
welcome you personally.
Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Lago and members of the commission. My name is Amit Tagani, and I'm here to testify on behalf of Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer in favor of the application before you today. After reviewing the application, it is the Borough President's opinion that the applicant has laid out a comprehensive argument for continuing heliport operations at the city-owned site. The information provided by the applicant suggests that this use has continued with minimal disturbance to the surrounding community and established a set of parameters which allows this to be an appropriate use at this location. The parameters include controls on noise levels, hours of operations, helicopter uses, and weekend restrictions. The applicant has met all the conditions of the special permit and provided the required documentation to our office and to city planning as we understand. The M23 zoning district supports this as an appropriate location for the heliport, given its accommodation of transportation and municipal facilities in other areas. Physical barriers such as the elevated FDR drive create a buffer between this use and the adjacent mixed-use neighborhood. The location of the heliport is ideally located in close proximity to Midtown Manhattan, still a major destination for many of the users, as came out of our conversations with the current operators. Additionally, the applicant has provided the DCP information about their Year 5 review that from the 2001 permit. The analysis concluded that the operator has not exceeded the stipulations of their prior agreement and strengthens the application's argument for continued use. In our conversations with EDC, the borough president made clear the need for regular updates to the affected board, council member, the borough president on the performance of the operator regarding compliance with regulations and mitigations applied. In response to that, EDC has provided in writing a list of commitments that was attached to our recommendation, outlining the agency's quarterly reporting framework so that the community is better informed. The applicants have been specifically responsive to concerns about public safety around the perimeter of the site. I won't rehash it because you all just discussed it with EDC, but we're appreciative of how they went about moving toward PDC preparation for the Public Design Commission, and we'll be watching to see that construction is completed at the end of June, as been communicated to us. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Questions for Mr. Tagani? Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are all the speakers that have been registered to speak on this item. If there is anyone else in the audience who would want to be heard, then the hearing is closed.
Someone raised their hand.
Oh, someone raised their hand?
Someone raised their hand.
I'm sorry, had someone raised their hand and wanting to be heard? No, okay, it wasn't a mistake.
Okay, Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 32, CD 11, C170269, PCM. A public hearing in the matter of an application for the site selection and acquisition of property concerning the Department of Sanitation, District 11 garage.
I'd like to welcome our Department of Sanitation Commissioner, Catherine Garcia, together with 8 members of her team are here with her and are available for questions. Commissioner.
Thank you for having me, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Catherine Garcia. I am the Commissioner of the Department of Sanitation, and I am here to speak on behalf of the need for us to acquire property at the Potamkin site for a new Manhattan 11 garage, as well as for lot cleaning staff. The real goals of this project are to continue to make sure that we can service the Manhattan 11 residents, both for collection of refuse as well as for snow removal. We also need to really address the fact that we have an employee health and safety issue at this facility that we have been on notice for more than 20 years. I actually would say probably closer to 30. And that we also, because of the serious structural deficiencies of this site, many of the collection trucks spend most of their time on First Avenue. And so the message to employees is that you have to actually be in a site that is not actually adequate for people. We have spent a lot of time trying to find an alternative for this particular garage for many, many years. And we have done reviews for any of the sites that have been presented to us by the community and tried to work with them to find additional locations. We have been unable to do so to date. And so just to give you an idea of what facilities are in Community Board 11, we have our salt shed, we have lot cleaning, and we have Manhattan 10 are currently located there, as well as Manhattan 11's current garage at 99th Street. So this is the location of our current garage, along with 2 lots that we use that are owned by the city and 1 lot that is owned privately. These are the current conditions of our site. So what you see is that it was built in 1920, we acquired it in 1968, so it was never designed for the equipment that the department currently uses. We cannot drive on the 2nd floor at this point in time. And so as the hospital and residential has encroached around us, we have become more and more of a nuisance to the community. So we have located the Potamkin site and have worked very hard to develop a lease that will be able to accommodate all of the trucks off of the street and provide better facilities for our employees, particularly their locker rooms. And so this is a schematic of how the trucks will fit within the building and within the lot. And then these are the renderings of what it will look like, particularly from the 128th Street site where the trucks will enter. This is the 127th Street. Well, that's a better rendering of what it is. But the reason I really came here today is because it is really important. Over the years, there's been just ongoing deferral of any facilities that we needed to upgrade across the city. And so in many cases, we are in substandard, inappropriate locations because there was not actual planning about the fact that there needed to be Department of Sanitation facilities continue to serve their communities. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have today, as is my staff. If there's something more technical I cannot address.
Questions for the Commissioner? Commissioner Efron.
With any anticipated rezoning in East Harlem, do you anticipate additional need for additional trucks, and is the new site adequate?
And so one of the things that we will evaluate as we get towards additional rezoning is that we think that we are adequately supplied with trucks to manage any future growth. One of the things that's happened over time is that we've seen changes in the amount of refuse produced across the city, and that has been coming down. So we feel confident that we'll be able to continue to service this community, even with a rezoning. We've been able to manage in many other communities that have been rezoned or significantly upzoned and provide them service.
Other questions? Commissioner Levin.
Well, Commissioner Garcia, as you're no doubt aware, well, let me preface it by saying I just don't think that any of us, there doesn't seem to be much dispute that the current location
Is awful.
has tremendous problems and that we need to find a better solution. But as you're certainly aware, there's been pretty pointed criticism from both the community board and the borough president about the proposed solution here, that it's just too small, that it's open to the sky, not mechanically ventilated, and not the kind of really first-rate facility that sanitation has built in other communities across the city. I know that there have probably been many compromises within your agency to try and figure out how to solve this serious problem for the District 11 garage. But I think the question on the table for us as a commission is whether this site is so compromised that it just isn't going to be good enough. It's smaller than I know you set out to find for new garages. You've had to make so many choices and compromises to squish this one onto this location. It's a 20-year lease. There's some dismay that this started out as city-owned land and now we're leasing it from a private, you're aware of all of the
Yes,
problems.
no, I
But
am.
how do you respond to those critics about just the adequacy of this proposal?
So we think that this is adequate. Is it perfect? No. Would I have loved to have found a much larger site and built a much bigger garage? I would have, but we have gone through the sites, and some of them, I know that you're aware of whether or not that's the Con Ed site. They're not willing to negotiate at all. I think in part because they don't want to be in the position I am, where we gave up property that in the future we realized we were going to need again. And then the Randall's Island site is used by DEP and FDNY and not available for us, and also I think too far away. The West 55th Street site would require us to condemn a bunch of minority-owned businesses, which I think is not in the best interest of the site, and 155 is also a really narrow street, so access isn't great. And then obviously the 126th Street MTA site has a whole different plan happening because of the African burial ground. And there really aren't any other sites that are appropriately zoned or appropriate for what's required of the department. And so have there been compromises made in order for this to be workable? Yes, but I think the question before us is it's 99th Street or it's this. And I'm very concerned that 99th Street is really structurally unsound at this point in time.
Other questions for the commissioner? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a number of speakers who are registered in opposition. If I could call on Halia Baker.
Thank you, Commissioners, for having me speak to you this afternoon. All right, my name is Halia Baker, and I live at 57 East 126th Street, and I'm here representing a Harlem Neighborhood Block Association. And our story is simple. We're just neighbors, tenants, and homeowners that have an interest in attaining the best quality of life for our neighborhood. So HMBNA wants to make sure that the community is not subjected to undesirable city services. We've formed together to work with our policymakers, our politicians, and community boards to urge city agencies such as the Department of Sanitation to abide by principles of fair share. So we've made a research and we studied and we realized that we already are home to 1,082 chemical dependency treatment beds. We are a community that hosts 5% of all Department of Homeless Services beds, 11% of all state office mental health licensed beds, and then now we're being asked also to house the CB10 sanitation facilities and this new site at 127th Street. So what's at stake if we allow this to happen? We feel that the site poses a health detriment to public schools and charter schools in the area. There's a highly active playground. There's 2 actively run houses of worship. There's a high-tech cancer treatment, the Proton Center, that's under construction. And then it also exasperates the already existing vehicular traffic horror show that we have that stems from the 3rd Avenue Bridge. It jeopardizes the future location of the Harlem African Burial Ground Memorial and other mixed use that is being developed for the Northeast Harlem area. So what we want is execution and implementation of fair doctrine in support of what's best for the community, as with other affluent neighborhoods in the city. We looked at the garage site that was put up in Soho. It's a $250 million architectural gem. In Astoria, the city has budgeted $130 million to replace a malign, outdated sanitation garage. But yet in East Harlem, the expected renovation and construction cost of the sanitation depot is only $28 million. So do we see disparity here? And are we victims of alternative facts? So HBNA feels that this is a critical issue and a solution can be found. The proposed site, as you mentioned, is really too small to house everything that they want to do. And we did a little research and we see that there is a site at East 110th and 11th Street on 3rd Avenue, and the owners of that site have a gas station that's already there. There are lines there for that gas tanks, and the owners are willing to sit with the city, sit with DOS, and discuss ways to hammer out a plan. They've got 80 to 90,000 square feet of use that they can put to this new facility. And I understand that we understand that the 99th Street location is not adequate. We get that. It's important to move that location, but we want to find the right solution. Because at the end of the day, we want to see resolve, and we want a facility that meets the entire community's needs. We had a meeting at the Community Board 11 where Speaker Mark Viverito, I always mess her name up, she was voting yes for this. But I realized that she wants to move this 99th Street location because it's a problem, and I understand that. But I think if she hears the outcries, you hear the outcries of the people in the community, you understand that it's just not right for us. We need to sit down and do some more study, not rush this thing, halt it a little bit. Is there somewhere else that we can find? Is there a better solution? I think we can find it because at the end of the day, we want a permanent site, not a Band-Aid solution, but a permanent site. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. If you could remain in the event that there are questions from commissioners?
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Delahoo's.
Yes.
Thanks, Ms. Baker, for being here. Can you just describe what engagement thus far you've had with the Department of Sanitation?
Well, I met with them when they came to the Community Board Meeting 11 on April 18th, and we spoke at length. I mean, they presented at length the same position that they have today, and then I spoke afterwards. And, you know, the person that I spoke with said, you know, we can always have a conversation. You know, nothing is set in stone, and at the end of the day, we all want what is right. 99th Street is not right, and we get that. You know, I'm an architect major, so I know when buildings are in decay, you need to find a solution. People are working there. People in that community are dealing with those trucks on the street. But I feel if this new location that I mentioned on First Avenue, it's a wider street. 127th Street is small, you know, and they've got all that traffic. You can have the trucks. And we have, within a 5-block radius, the other location with trucks underneath Park Avenue. So you've got all that compacted in one area, even though it seems like it's at the end of the, you know, the island, and it might be seeming like, you know, looking down as a pigeon, it might be the right place. But when you're down on the ground, it's really not the right place. At least that's our perspective.
Thank you. Other questions? Thank you, Ms. Baker.
Thank you so much.
Our next speaker in opposition is Phil Kelly.
Good afternoon. My name is Phil Kelly. I live on 127th Street and Madison Avenue. I've been there for about 10 years, lived in Harlem for about 15 years. I agree with some of the concerns that have been raised by Hallian, which I think are going to be raised by other speakers about health risks and fair share. But since I think those points are going to be well covered, I wanted to talk to you today about a concern that the location for the proposed site is just a poor choice from a common sense and urban planning perspective. We think it will be detrimental to the positive development of the area and its use and enjoyment by local residents and visitors. Setting aside the details of the impact report, you know, we all know that sanitation garages are unfavorable land use. I talked yesterday to one of the small business owners that's alongside another sanitation garage, and they told me, you know, we get reduced rent because there's only so many people who will have a business here, and it compensates us for the smell and the flies in the summer and having to look at garage trucks so much. We don't think putting a garage between a cancer hospital, a ballpark, 2 churches, 2 schools, a senior center, and the proposed African Burial Ground Memorial is good urban planning by New York City. We think that's true for any sanitation garage. We certainly think it's true for one of the quality and configuration currently proposed and which may or may not be adequate for long-term needs. Let me just elaborate a little bit when I say, when I talk about the area. 2 blocks immediately to the south of the site is the $700 million development of the East Harlem Media, Entertainment, and Cultural Center that's currently underway. The first phase is the Proton Cancer Treatment Center that's sponsored by Sloan Kettering. That directly abuts the south side of the site, all the way along the edge and for one of the entrances. As you know, the later phases of the development are intended to include affordable housing and attract retail investment. Immediately to the north of the site, again, less than 30 feet away from the north boundary of the site is the Harlem River Ballpark Field, where amongst other things, the Little League practices, and which is the main green space serving a variety of housing in the neighborhood, including the AK House and Jackie Robinson houses. To the west, again, within feet are 2 churches, the United Moravian and the True Church of God. Also adjacent is the King's Academy of Harlem's, and the Success Academy of Harlem's second site. And then the other side of 3rd Avenue is the Salvation Army site's redevelopment for a senior center. And then finally, as you know, to the southeast is the bus depot, which is likely to be redeveloped to include the African burial ground. It's just not a good location for a sanitation garage given the current and planned use of the surround land. It already looks very like what is on 99th Street location, you know, a hospital, a school, lots of retail and residential development. And it's highly unlikely, in my view, to allow for expansion of the site that will come with the East Harlem redevelopment zone. Moving the garage there will cost the city money without any net gain and inhibit positive development and enjoyment of the area. So we think the plan is so compromised that we'd ask you to oppose it. We understand there are other sites that have the potential for better locations. Gail Brewer has suggested a temporary plan, and we'd ask you to oppose this site as currently planned.
On the bell. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Questions from Mr. Kelly? Commissioner Levin.
So what would you say if, I mean, we heard Commissioner Garcia basically say it's this or 99th Street. And I think if you look at the question, if you look at the issue that way,
yeah,
the answer is pretty clear. But so what if this were just a temporary site? What if we said to ourselves, look, we know we've got to get out of, we've got to find an alternative to 99th Street because that's just not a tenable situation. This one isn't great, but it can work for 20 years. And we committed ourselves right now to finding a full-blown, appropriate, large, public, permanent site.
The problem with that as a plan, as I think Commissioner Garcia self-referenced, is that all of these plans end up extended and delayed. And I think, as she herself said, the plan for relocating 99th Street has been in the work for decades. If you put this in East Harlem now, I think there's a very high chance it will be stuck there for decades. We all know these decisions are very difficult. They take a lot of planning. I think it's really important to get it right. Otherwise, we'll be stuck with, you know, something that happened because you had a gun to your head.
Other questions for Mr. Kelly? Commissioner Efron.
How important would the mechanical ventilation be if this were a temporary site for 20 years? Are there things that you representing the community, I imagine you've spoken to your neighbors, if you've spoken to the business people and other places near Department of Sanitation facilities, what could make this better in the minds of the community?
I'm not an expert on sanitation sites. I think the kind of high-level answer to that is that if the Tribeca site deserved $250 million because of all similar concerns, and they deserved a state-of-the-art site in terms of pollution and processing and nuisance and aesthetics, then East Harlem deserves exactly the same thing. I think that's a very easy answer.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Kelly? Thank you. Our next speaker in opposition is Deputy Borough President Matthew Washington.
Good afternoon, Chair Lago and Commissioners. My name is Matthew Washington, Deputy Borough President, and I'm here today on behalf of Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer and for myself as a lifelong East Harlem resident. In regard to the application by the Department of Sanitation to develop a new district garage facility for Manhattan Community District 11, the Manhattan Lot Cleaning Unit, LCU, and the LCU headquarters at 207-17 East 127th Street, Block 1792, Lot 5, part of Lot 28, in East Harlem neighborhood, Community Board 11. To start, my perspective as a lifelong East Harlem resident. The fact that the current sanitation facility at East 99th Street has been considered unsafe since I was in elementary school, and that we are only now seeing a proposal to address this problem should give you pause. Furthermore, the solution does not solve any of the site planning concerns long raised by the neighborhood, including those raised during the process and in more recent history in a series of letters authored while I served as chair of Community Board 11 should be cause for concern. Additionally, the long-awaited garage in a community that continues to shoulder the weight of numerous city facilities does not actually solve for the long-term needs of DSNY nor the neighborhood. That should be enough reason to turn down this application, and these are reasons that also resonated with the borough president. Our office understands that in 1988, the exterior wall at 343 East 99th Street facility was compromised, and the Department of Sanitation sought a site to relocate its Manhattan 11 garage. It is nearly 3 decades since that event, and through the period, no action was taken to provide the workers of the M11 and the community of East Harlem with a suitable facility. Instead, the workers at M11 have been forced to serve the people of East Harlem from a decrepit building with permanent scaffolds supporting the exterior wall and second-floor slab that has been deemed structurally unsound. The residents of the community, in turn, have had to suffer through the sight of collection trucks sitting on their streets just feet from Metropolitan Hospital and surrounding residences. We do not doubt the need for a new facility. We are concerned that we are being asked to accept a bad deal in an effort to surge ahead of the current untenable position we find ourselves in at East 99th Street. First, the location of the proposed site presents many of the same issues associated with the current garage location. As a result, it does not create a compelling basis for the DSNY's choice as the new garage destination. The immediate area is mixed use in nature, with development proposals that will bring more residential and commercial space, including the proposal currently in ULURP for the African Burial Grounds and former MTA bus depot. Additionally, by relocating the M11 garage to 207 127th Street, East Harlem will house 2 separate DSNY garages within 5 blocks of each other. The site itself, approximately 48,000 square feet, is about half the size of the space needed to provide a more permanent facility, such as the one constructed at Spring Street, a lot of approximately 80,000 square feet.
If you could quickly wrap up your comments.
I can certainly do that. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's skip that one. Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I suspect there may be a question or two for you.
All right. I appreciate that, Madam Chair. Let's see. Secondly, the plan highlights the pitfall of releasing city assets without long-term planning or community involvement. It's a challenge because this was originally a city-owned site and then sold in 2002. And also, at a minimum, the opportunity to terminate the lease prior to 20 years might create a path to developing a multi-district garage somewhere else or an adjacent district at some point in the future. But being locked in for that long term doesn't make it a short-term facility. The one thing I will say, if I may,
we will gladly accept also the letter, your written testimony as well.
Definitely. The one thing that I want to acknowledge, and I know sanitation has been working hard on this project, but just to finish up by saying, the site planning, if the site planning was appropriate and alternate locations fully vetted and exhausted, we would remain concerned about the lack of equity paid to the design of the facility. Despite the issues identified regarding the proposed location, one prevailing message that has been delivered by the community board and other neighborhood residents repeatedly is conversation and testimony is that the location could be accepted if the facility mirrors the garages developed and proposed in other areas like the M125 garage at Spring Street. And I'll close it up and really appreciate the extra time.
Of course, Deputy Borough President. Questions? Yes, Commissioner Efron.
Would you like to be specific about what sort of investment areas you would consider adequate?
Certainly. I think in terms of the facility itself, when we look at the Spring Street facility for the M125 garage, a substantial investment, approximately $250 million, maybe larger, but it creates a facility that keeps all the trucks inside. There are air filters that ensure for the highest quality air coming out of the facility. There's the world's most gorgeous green roof that you'll find anywhere on top of a sanitation garage. And the investment in terms of design of not only the garage, but the salt shed on the south side of Spring Street, I think they've won more awards than any other building in New York City. So they're beautifully designed and certainly appropriate for a mixed-use community.
I would point out there's a really great green roof on top of the waste transfer station up in West Harlem, too.
The Old North River, the Riverbank State Park is one of the great destinations of this city. And the only state park in the system you can take a public bus to.
As a frequent user, I have to agree how magnificent, and isn't it great we have a city with dueling green roofs?
Yeah.
Other questions? Commissioner Delos.
I totally appreciate the comments about the design. I would assume, and perhaps DSNY can speak to this later, that part of the challenge is this is proposed to be a lease situation for 20 years, and those are facilities that are owned, and to invest that much money in a lease facility, I think is perhaps part of the challenge.
We agree. I mean, we've spoken with sanitation about our desire for the Department of Sanitation to own the facility. We recognize the limitations, but we think city facilities should be on city-owned land. Unfortunately, that does not happen in many, many cases, but we think a place where the department and the city owns it and is not beholden to a private landlord is the best way to make sure city facilities are operated, designed, and built appropriately. We agree.
Other questions? Thank you, Deputy Borough President Washington.
Thank you.
Our next speaker in opposition is William Rogers.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for allowing me to speak. My name is William Rogers. I am a board member of the Uptown Grand Central 501c3, a member of the New Harlem East Merchants Association, a director of partnership for Pass NYC, an active nonprofit focused on expanding educational opportunities for our children. I am owner of Sisters Caribbean Cuisine, a staple of the East Harlem neighborhood for almost 23 years, and most importantly, I'm a resident of East Harlem. This is a critical issue for our neighborhood, not only in its physical impacts on health, infrastructure, and property value, but additionally for the psychological and social impact of being the city's dumping ground for deleterious public projects and services. These programs are supposed to be for the general good, but always negatively affect our neighborhood and its residents. Where is our representation? As a business owner, property owner, and resident, why should I believe my well-being is in any way being represented? Now, of course, I am sympathetic to the health crisis, but addicts have been bused from all over the city into my neighborhood at an increasing rate over the past many years, depressing the appeal of walking the streets, in many cases making it downright dangerous. East Harlem assaults that lead to hospitalization is almost 200 times higher than the rest of Manhattan. Unregulated commercial rents have drained wealth from neighborhoods' historically ethnic small businesses, driving up vacancy and crippling hopes of curating a healthy and cultural commercial district. Now, we are asked to house a new sanitation garage, one which plans do not approach the sophistication or care of constructions in other parts of the borough, one which is certain to drive down our property value. In a district where life expectancy is over a decade shorter than their southern neighbors, in a district where child hospitalization for asthma is over 300 times the rate of the rest of Manhattan, in a district where children receive a dramatically worse education than their southern neighbors, to even be having a conversation about exasperating these realities to the benefit of our more well-off neighbors to the south is incredibly insulting. Why shouldn't we believe our lives, businesses, and children are valued less? I implore you all to act in the interest of East Harlem's residents. More importantly, act on behalf of our children. Black and brown children in our community will already face incredible hurdles to success because of the color of their skin and upbringing. Let's not let East Harlem be an additional and growing hurdle for them to face. What I hope you can do for us is to convey a message to all the city offices who hope to be active in East Harlem. That message is, we've had enough. Enough of the pressure to move a sanitation garage into our neighborhood. Enough of methadone and other treatment centers popping up in our neighborhood. We are for an indefinite freeze on all projects that in any way decrease the quality of life for East Harlem residents until the point in which our verifiable quality of life statistics more closely resemble that of the rest of the borough. Thank you for your time, and I hope you understand and champion these issues on my behalf, on our behalf. And I just want to add real quickly, the commissioner mentioned that they've been on notice for 30 years. If that is the case, I would wonder why there's such a budgeting issue when over that 30-year period, there have been $250 million constructions. Why is it that such a...
If we could ask you, Mr. Rogers, to
Yes.
wrap up, and we'll gladly take your testimony.
No problem. Please, any questions?
And I also want to thank you for taking time from running your business to come here to testify. Questions from the commissioners? Thank you. Our next speaker in opposition is Minister Yolanda Eisler.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And yes, I am Minister Yolanda Monique Isler. I live in East Harlem and I serve in East Harlem. I work directly with a great amount of youth, as well as I work with the Salvation Army, servicing the homeless, as well as all of the myriad of youth programs that they have there. They have children 7 days a week in a variety of capacities. And I am a life coach. I am a counselor. So I also am called in. I serve at different hospitals. And so I'm coming on behalf of our reality, the people of East Harlem, and what this will mean for us. We appreciate the fact that it's absolutely imperative that the location at 99th Street be dealt with. We understand that. However, we do not believe that this location in East Harlem is a right fit. When we look at this city that we live in, we do not see the same types of decisions being made in other areas. The reason that this location is no good for 99th Street is because of the crumbling infrastructure. One, absolutely. However, we understand that the scent, the smell, especially across the street from the hospital, is a major issue. Well, it would also be a major issue in East Harlem. Not just for the residents, but the residents are enough because they're worth having an environment where they can breathe freely, just like those in Tribeca and Soho and such. However, we are also anticipating this Proton Center, a hospital for cancer patients, people who we know what they're dealing with is life or death. And we know, I'm not gonna act like you all don't know, but we all know the science in the medical arena has decided that different scents make a huge difference in how a patient feels. The view makes a difference in how the patient feels and therefore recovers. Different colors, and they're doing all of this in hospitals now. They're even asking the loved ones to come in and to bring in certain items, because all of these things matter. So to put this out there in their area, along with all the children, these things matter. If they matter at 99th Street, we have to know they matter in East Harlem.
Thank you so much, Reverend Minister. Are there questions from the commission for the minister? Thank you. Our next speaker in opposition is Holly Drakeford.
Hello, everyone. My name is Holly Drakeford. I am Chair of Economic Development, Culture, and Tourism with Community Board 11, and on the Board of Trustees with the College of Podiatry, Salvation Army, New Harlem East Merchants Association, and a bunch of other boards. I'm not going to knock you over with names. I'm here today because I did find a site, which is 205 to 223 3rd Avenue. I've had conversations with the owners, and they would entertain Salvation Army putting their facility on that site. Their plan is to build 180,000 square feet, of which they would dedicate the 80,000 square feet that's needed by sanitation, and then possibly build another 100,000 square feet on top. And I just gave my card to a gentleman in the back, and I enlist that they will probably call me and we can engage in conversation if they wish to pursue this any further. I'm not going to go through all the perils that you've already heard 3,000 times. They've already been beat up every time they come to community board. So do you have any questions?
Yeah, duly noted. Thank you, Mr. Drakeford. Questions from the commission? Thank you for taking the time.
Okay.
Our final speaker in opposition is Diane Collier.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Diane Collier. I'm the Chair of Community Board 11. I am so glad to be back again before you. And today I'm here before you to talk about CB 11's no position to the move of the sanitation garage from 99th to the urban renewal Potamkin site on 127th. 3 times, ladies and gentlemen, 3 times. Community Board 11 has said no. The first time, 2013, when they came to us with the concept of an open lot garage at 127th Street. Then Matthew, who was the chair, asked them and sent a letter saying that this was no. This was a definite no to the concept, and clearly to include us in the discussions going forward. 3 years later, 2016, they came back to the community board. I am now chair. And now they come with visuals, and I must admit, they were very nice visuals presentation. However, it was the same concept. It was the same design, which practically is no design. And so clearly we said to them, we reiterated all the issues and all of the things that you heard today. But clearly what we said, we would like you to consider developing a consolidated garage, which would include CB10s. And then the third time they've come back, this time it was more outrage and more firm from CB11. This is a definite no. We did it in resolution form. I may say that we did it at resolution form at a late meeting in full board. This is how outraged the community board members with it. It was 27-3 to deny. So it's not that we've been considering this lightly. We've been talking about this since 2013. We've included it in our budget priorities. We have talked about it at the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan. It's in the East Harlem Neighborhood Plan. And so we don't come to this no lightly, nor do we come to it emotionally. So as I was thinking last night about what I was going to say, and of course I could read our resolution, but I won't do that because you're going to bing me before I do that. I could repeat many of the things that you heard here today as to why
all the environmental impacts and all the things you have read. Or I was thinking, oh, I could be dramatic. I can say no and drop the mic. But I won't do that either.
That might be a first.
I'm sure. I am sure. Instead, I've chosen to conclude with a statement from page 9 of the City Planning Harlem, East Harlem Urban Renewal Plan, January 28th. Not, of course, this configuration of city planning, but this is what they said in January 2008. It is the intent of this plan, Harlem, East Harlem Urban Renewal Plan, that the area be developed in a manner compatible with or beneficial to the surrounding community. Can I finish? That the project should harmonize in scale, configuration, and materials to the prevailing neighborhood pattern, and provide a stable environment within the area which will not be a blighting influence on surrounding community. It is just as relevant then as it is today, so I urge you to vote no on this application.
Thank you, Ms. Collier, and I can assure you that the community board's full resolution is in the materials.
Yes, I know, that's why I did.
Questions from commissioners? If not, I'll thank Ms. Collier.
Thank you.
And
it's
thank
good
you
to
for
see
giving
you.
us the history.
I'll see you June 7th.
We have a speaker in favor. If I could ask Arlana Davis.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I don't have a prepared statement, but in listening to the comments and having worked as executive director of the Real Estate Division for Sanitation, it's been my job to site facilities. One of the most difficult jobs I think exists, because there was a statement that sanitation services are not essential, are not needed, are not desirable. Go one day and not have your garbage picked up. Have a snowstorm and not have the snow removed. I can tell you and testify that we are desirable. Whether you believe it or not, we are. We've worked with the community for a number of years, dating back to the early 80s, in trying to identify a site. In 1988, when I was there, we took members of Community Board 11, Community Board 10, elected officials, Borough President's Office, to several sites, some existing city-owned sanitation facilities, and some proposed site, one in particular, 155th and McCombs. Every site over the last decade has been rejected for one reason or the other. Brendan Sexton was the commissioner, some of you may remember, back in the 80s. And letters were written to him about, well, you need to move the East 99th Street garage. It's an eyesore, it abuts residences. And we said, okay, fine, here's a site, 155th and McCombs, 118th Street. We looked at sites that are now developed. There's a very limited amount of sites available. We feel that our men and women who work at the Manhattan 11 garage, they deserve better. They deserve a facility where they can operate from and not be concerned that the wall is going to collapse, that they can't have a decent place to change and wash up after they're collecting your garbage. No, this is not the ideal site. No, this is not the ideal construction of a sanitation garage. We'd like to build in every community, particularly in Manhattan, a facility that is enclosed, that fully operates with state-of-the-art mechanical systems. But we're faced with a challenge, and the challenge is, in the immediate term, how do we provide adequate facilities for our men and women to operate from? May I finish?
If you could wrap it up.
Okay.
please.
To operate from and have our trucks parked in a parking lot. Yes, it will be somewhat enclosed with a fence, sort of brick fence around it.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. I think at this point, we will cut off the testimony, but ask if there are questions from commissioners. Commissioner Levin.
I appreciate you must have one of the hardest jobs in the city. And for the most part, you do pretty well at finding good sites and building fantastic garages. And I appreciate your candor in acknowledging the challenges of this location. One bundle of concerns we've heard about this facility is that it is open to the sky, that it will not be mechanically ventilated. From an operational standpoint, how do you deal with the odors and the vermin and all the nasty things that you're able to control in an enclosed facility? What's it going to be like to live next to this thing?
We've done a thorough environmental review, which included an air, noise, and traffic analysis. And I have with me today Steve Brodigan, who is the Assistant Commissioner in Legal Affairs for Environmental Review, and he can explain more fully as to how we will operate, and there should be no odors or any noise emanating from this facility.
I would note that Mr. Brodigan is registered as a speaker,
Okay.
so first we'll see if there are any more questions for the person with the toughest job in city government.
So he'll address that, but I
Okay.
can't say.
I don't know that odor is part of the seeker standards, but anyway, you can make it not smell. Are you going to make it not smell?
The trucks are washed on a regular schedule, and there should not be, they should dump on shift, so there should not be any odors, no.
Commissioner Irfan.
I actually have an engineering question or one about the space. Are you someone who can answer that?
No,
or would it
I
be
would
somebody
defer
else?
to our
And
architect
There is
for
somebody
that,
else, an
yes.
architect who will be speaking. Okay.
I would note that the architect has not registered as a speaker. If the architect would like to register, obviously.
Yes, he's registered. It may not say
Okay.
architect on there, but he is registered. Jay?
There is a difference between registering as a member of the applicant team for questions and then registering as a speaker. If, again, anyone is free to register as a speaker. Other questions for Ms. Davis? Then thank you very much. Our next speaker who is registered as a speaker is Stephen Brodigan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the Commission. I'm Assistant Commissioner for Environmental Matters in the Office of Legal Affairs at Sanitation. And in that capacity, I oversaw the environmental review on behalf of the Commissioner for this project. And I just wanted the Commissioners to know that we did follow the city's City Environmental Quality Review Manual, the technical manual for doing environmental review. We engaged outside consultants, the firm of Hennigs, Durham, and Richards, and we worked with the City Department of Environmental Protection on the air and noise aspect of it, and we worked with the City Department of Transportation on the traffic aspect of it, and we satisfied their experts that this facility would not have a significant adverse impact on air quality, on noise levels, and on traffic conditions in the neighborhood. So we felt that's why we were able to issue the negative declaration after doing the environmental assessment. On the odor aspect of this, as was mentioned, we will have the East 91st Street Marine Transfer Station in operation, of course, and we will be able to dump our loads on shift. So this will not oppose some of the issues that we've had at some of our other locations, including at 99th Street currently. I also wanted to mention the Spring Street garage, which you've heard about, which we're very proud of. Let's keep in mind that was a 3-district garage, so we actually stacked 3 service districts on top of each other, which of course means it's going to be an enclosed garage. This is a 1-district garage here, so it's really not comparable in that respect. And we have other unenclosed truck storage locations outside of Manhattan and some inside Manhattan. So I know we have a new high bar, it sounds like, for the Spring Street garage, which we're proud of, and we wish we had a budget to do that everywhere. But that was one situation for 3 different districts. I think that's one other point. We did take a look at the 3rd Avenue site that was mentioned by a previous speaker at 111th Street, and wanted to point out the zoning there is for residential. And so that would require a rezoning and also potential issues of proximity to residential uses. So the zoning at this site is M3-1, and that's, of course, it's perfect for us, and we're going to be providing the screening from neighboring uses that's required by the zoning. So we think it's going to be an attractive garage, and we're committed to make it operate as a good neighbor.
Any questions for Mr. Bracken? Yes, Commissioner Marin.
Mr. Bracken, thank you. As you know, there's been several of us that have expressed a concern over noxious odors. So can you talk a little bit about the trucks going to the new 91st Street facility and then coming here? Do they get washed down at the 91st Street facility? Do they get washed down when they come to this facility? What's that process of keeping those trucks clean?
The trucks are fully dumped at the 91st Street Marine Transfer Station for refuse. We will also, of course, have some recycling trucks at this location. It doesn't pose the same kind of odor concerns, but they'll be dumped at another location for paper and for metal, glass, and plastic. We wash the trucks, as you heard, on a regular schedule. It isn't necessarily every day, although we are committed to making this facility work, and if we need to, we have a wash bay in the plan. So we can step up the washing schedule. They come back empty. So they're then parked until typically the next day's use. And you'll see that you'll have the roll-up doors that will be closed when the facility's not requiring the trucks to go in and out. So we feel that this is going to be sufficient. And I will also mention that we have done odor studies in the past, which were reported in our environmental impact statement for the Marine Transfer Station. Those odor studies actually were based on a garage and taking odor samples near parked trucks in garages and then submitting them to an odor panel for analysis, actual samples. And they found that within a very short distance from the truck, you really do not have odors from our empty trucks.
So when you say they're not washed down every day, what's the frequency of washing these trucks down, especially the ones that are going to be parked here?
I think the current frequency is every 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Bradigan. We also now have available for questions Jay Keenan, the architect.
Good afternoon, Jay Keenan.
Questions from any of the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Efron.
Hi. I'm just trying to reconcile the idea that all of these trucks are coming in and going out at different times, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of what we've come to know as reservoir space in the garage. How will this function?
Actually, that's not even a question for me. I think that's a question for previous speaker as to how they function during the day. Is that?
Well, I think it really is a question about the layout of the space, because the trucks are parked cheek to jowl, sorry for the non-technical term, and it's just, as a layperson, which is what I am in this position, it's really hard to understand how there's adequate space that wouldn't have those trucks out on the sidewalk at some regular interval or street.
The trucks come in at different intervals. The trucks don't all come at the same time. And what's shown on there right now is actually the trucks at the end of the day, just so that we could space them. Is that?
So I guess this might be a question for somebody else, but as the architect, I imagine you have some familiarity with how this should work. Will there be trucks out on the sidewalk or in the street at any point during the day?
No.
And if I could suggest that we will ask for clarification in the follow-up when the commission
Thank you.
meets in the post-hearing discussion. Those are other questions for Mr. Keenan. Okay, thank you. That is the end of the registered speakers, but again, if there is anyone in the audience who would want to be heard on this matter, please let me know. If not,
One more speaker, sorry.
thank you very much. We just received a speaker in opposition, and if Mahfouzur Rahman, thank you. It's live.
Oh, okay. Hello? Oh. Hi, everyone. Good morning, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners on City Planning Commission. My name is Mahfouzur Rahman, and I will say right now, I would be taking a calculus class in high school right now. However, I am here with you all today to discuss a much more complex subject, as if calculus weren't hard enough. I'd like to echo the sentiments made by CB11's Chair, Diane Collier, as well as the board president, Matthew Washington. I myself am a board member on CB11, and I am the vice chair for health on the committee. I have worked with CAV in Queensbridge houses in Queens. I have worked with the Bronx offenders and Melrose houses in the Bronx. Now, these houses are all NYCHA houses. And for this site, I can attest that there are Wagner houses are right nearby. There are several thousand people living by. There's also a nifty pool nearby, which you guys may want to check out. But I'm a NYCHA resident as well, presiding at Taft houses. We face an enormity of health problems and issues within our own development. And to hear that a new sanitation garage is going to be prepositioned at this site, it's just adds on absurdity. There's already a NYCHA development that is nearby to the current 96th Street site, and they more or less are experiencing issues, more health issues over its 30 years of operation. And I would also add on that for the plans that are given, it seems odd that there wouldn't be any roof over this facility, which allows, and let's say we have odors, but not all odors, okay, not all odors can be stopped. You can't stop all diseases because some just come about and go about, and this is going to go about in our communities, which is why we need very good mechanical ventilation to filter out the air, to filter out East Harlem's air. If you're to go to the site, you can see there's a bridge right there. There's car and traffic going around. You can see we can see a bright future with now the 116th Street bus depot, which is more or less going to create a new cultural pathways and reveal more of the history and our community to the city and to the world.
Mr. Rahman, I don't know if your professors would agree that it
high
was good
school.
of you to skip class, or your teacher would agree. But I want to thank you for coming forward and also for the impressive amount of public service that you're already undertaking. And with that, I would ask if any of the commissioners have questions for Mr. Rahman. Thank you so much.
Thank you, commissioners.
Are there other people in the audience who would be interested in speaking? If not, then this public hearing is closed.
Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 33, CD2, C170280ZSM. A public hearing in the matter of an application for the grant of a special permit concerning 62 Green Street.
Okay, our first speaker on this item is Caroline Harris. Oh, okay, well, wait a minute as people leave the room. Although you do have a big voice, Carrie, you could speak over them.
Yes, I can. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I've been here since the morning. My client was here since the morning, but Neil Slavin, one of the residents of the building, is an artist and is putting up an exhibition, and he had to leave. I have with me is Gustavo Luxinger from Bone Levine Architects, in case you have any questions about the designs or layouts. I'm Caroline Harris. Goldman Harris, we represent 62 Green Owners Corporation seeking a Section 74-711 special permit to modify the use regulations to allow use group 6 on most of the ground floor and part of the cellar of this existing 5-story building with a lot area of 4,800 square feet in the Soho Cast Iron District. The building is owned by artists. They are most of the original owners of the building when it went co-op. They had originally wanted to apply for use group 2 on floors 2 through 6, but were dissuaded from doing so. And by variety of discussions we've had, and have now only applying for use group 6 on the ground floor and the portion of the cellar. I know you were fully briefed. It's been a long day. I'm happy to go into more discussion about the description of the project, but I don't know that you need it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, and so is Mr. Luxinger. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Levin.
Well, it seems unfair to not at least give you a little bit of airtime after this very long day. We all know that the retail situation is shifting, particularly in Soho. I'm interested in your client's thoughts about what kind of retail would be most desirable for the owners. And I know you've had discussions with Borough President about potential occupants. Could you elaborate a little bit on who you think might like this space?
Certainly. The client's objective, as I mentioned, did I mention there are all artists?
Yeah.
At least one person in each household is an artist, and the cost of upkeep of the building is expensive. The work that's being done, some of it necessary because the building is in some disrepair, and some of it is enhancing to meet the standards for 74-711. It all costs money, and so their main objective is market rate in order to cover the costs of the restoration and some ongoing maintenance costs of the building. So they get some of the rental for the ground floor helps pay for the building. That's their main objective. They do not want a restaurant. They don't want something noisy during the day that would also, or in the evening, that would disturb their occupancy. They would have been happy to have a conforming use. A couple of conforming uses have approached, looked at the space, but can't pay market rent. And so they're not desirable tenants for the building. They are committed to working with EDC's Made in New York program because they're artists. They do like the feel of an artisan type of place, something that is reminiscent anyway of what Soho was for a period of years, and working with DCA. But as I said, their objective is to get market rent. Green Street is a very popular street. Virtually all of it is, where's my land use map? this one? Virtually all of Green Street is got retail on the ground floor. You can see in the land use map. Virtually all of Green Street is retail in the ground floor. And they would end up, I believe, to answer the second part of your question, I think they're going to end up with maybe a clothing shop that made in New York clothing. I don't know, but it's got to be someone who's going to pay rent, and the rents on Green are not.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Ortiz.
You raised an issue that's a real conundrum for us, because you say market rent for a use that requires a special permit, a market rent for a use that is not, allowed as of right. We continue to face this challenge that the as of right use, no one's interested in the as of right use anymore. And so, it creates a situation where we're asked to support someone's assumptions about a pro forma, and it's less of a land use issue for us. And I just sort of state that I just sort of put it out there, because I don't know if we're really supposed to be in a position to be saying that, we're here to support a market rent for a use that is not allowed as of right.
So to speak to that issue, I'm sympathetic to your conundrum. I've been coming before you now for quite a few years discussing this very issue. My solution would be to make as of right use of retail on the ground floor. The area has changed. And if the artists who are supposedly being protected by the law in the JLQWA law not allowing ground floor retail, can't make a go of maintaining their building, then there's something cockeyed here. So I think the conundrum is deeper. It's not to say don't allow this, particularly this building, which is occupied only by artists in residence and their families. The answer isn't don't allow them who need it the most. I'm doing double negative, sorry. Allow them to allow them to have the retail use in the ground floor so they can continue to be artists in the upper floors. I think for this project, this is an ideal case where 74-711 is appropriate and it's needed. The broader policy question, I've said this before, and I mean no disrespect, the cows are out of the horses are out of the barn. This is entirely retail, and I think it's time the city recognized that.
I would also note, Commissioner Ortiz, that this is a special permit. This is not the special permit that we sometimes see for conversion of industrial space. It had not been industrial space. It is actually a preservation requirement rather than the advertising
That's
for
right,
the fixed
yes.
number of days.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions for Ms. Harris? Thank you. And the public hearing is closed.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Even if we're hungry and cranky.
I didn't experience any crankiness.
And looking at the empty room, I assume that no one else was here to speak on the matter.
Okay.
So, Madam Secretary.
The hearing is closed. Okay, Borough of Manhattan, calendar number 34, concerning 462 Broadway. This item has been postponed to June 7, 2017.
And Madam Secretary, any other items on the agenda?
No, Madam Chair.
If not, lunchtime.
Thank you.